really excited to introduce Anthony and Keith. So Anthony is kind of the engineering side of the Anthony-Keith duo. Keith is more of the designer, but they work really well together as this kind of designer-developer duo, and do kind of this design technical work using object-oriented UX. And of course, is one of their many tools that they use at Think Company. Anthony and Keith were on the OUX podcast. You may have listened to them on the OUX podcast. If you have not yet, as soon as they start talking, I'll go grab that link so you can bookmark that and make sure to listen to that conversation and hear how OUX has integrated into Think Company and how they're using it with their clients. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about how they're using it with Airtable. From what I know, we're going to get a little bit of a presentation and even actually, I think, some sort of live demo. We're actually going to get into Airtable. So I'm going to pass it over to the two of them. And yeah, excited to hear what y'all have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I will attempt to share my screen. It says you may have to stop sharing yours first, but continue.
Oh, because I'm sharing my music. That's right. I'm not even sharing.
Yeah, but I think it may just take it over. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
All right. Nice. Cool. So yes, thank you for having us on the happy hour extravaganza on Cinco de Mayo, a great special celebration now. So yeah, we got the introduction already, but really we're going to be talking about leveraging Airtable as a CMS. And we're super excited to do that now. So we can introduce ourselves a little bit more. Anthony, you can go ahead first.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Anthony Gallo. I'm a senior UX engineer with Think Company, working on all different kinds of applications, but here today primarily to talk about some of the work we've done using Airtable as a CMS to kind of manage content in some applications. Yeah, that's about where I'm coming from.
Awesome. Yep. And on the other side of the duo, the design and dev, that's myself, and I'm a principal designer at Think Company. I've been there for about 4 years now and worked with a million amazing people there, including Anthony. So we're excited to share with you today just some examples of how we've done that projects and using Airtable on that kind of central source of truth for both design and for dev. And then I'll probably share some links. We're going to kind of allude to some of them, but I'll share them in the chat now. And sorry if it looks like spam, but there's quite a few links, but you can always reference them if, as we go, as we're talking through them. And then those will be in the recap, I imagine, Sophia, afterwards, so you won't miss those. Cool. But yeah.
Next episode in there too.
Oh, we do? Awesome. Cool. So yeah, Anthony and I are representing many, amazing thinkers. So even though we are the ones here, we're kind of standing on the shoulders of people, past and present. So Karen Toledano, John Young, Ian McPhail have all kind of helped and kind of shepherded OOUX, Airtable, CMS work, anything that's kind of working together between design and dev to get that all working in tandem very well. So shout out to them. And of course, those links are in the chat already. But today we're focusing mainly on Airtable and how that kind of unlocks the collaboration, management, and displaying of content on your product's interface there. And we did write one of those articles that goes in depth. We don't have as much time to go fully into every intricacy of it here, but I think what you'll see from the demo is going to be really fascinating and awesome. So before we get into that, though, there is a caveat, and there's an Airtable memo that just came out recently. So Anthony will tell you more about the technical aspects around that, but no need to worry there.
Yeah, so recently Airtable put out a little memo saying that essentially they didn't want to be responsible for hosting people's assets anymore, images and the such. And that meant that the attachment fields, they were going to change how they work. The URLs would be changing frequently. And that kind of meant that you wouldn't be able to reliably host images there. And that's fine. What they had said was that you will need a CDN in the future. And what that is it's a content distribution network. It's a way of hosting assets and making them, there's a lot of benefits to having one, but it's a way to host assets and deliver them to a client's machine. And there's a couple ways to work around with this. With Airtable, I've started kind of workshopping one out myself. But the good news is that it's not the end of the world. We can still use Airtable for all of our content management needs and then offload our asset distribution to a tool purpose built for that. So yeah, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about that at any point.
Awesome. Yeah. And then one of those links we linked to is a discussion in the Airtable forum community. Bill French started it and just kind of explains the process of kind of going from the Airtable, workflow that we know today until the future, where they kind of have those expiring links coming up there. So yeah, definitely check that out for more information. All right. So with that out of the way, we kind of dive into some of our process at Think Company. And then also just thinking about how we integrate Airtable, because we love using that. That's usually the first tool we go to, no matter what it is. Everything kind of starts at research. And so we're putting insights into Airtable. Sometimes they make it all the way to the end, when we're developing, and as a crucial tool still. But yeah, lovely place to start when we're doing this. And so this is an example of, in the past where sometimes it is more siloed and things start to get kind of stuck in the box for certain disciplines. So development will kind of think about their tool set, the stack that they'll be using separately from design. And so what we like to do, and we've kind of called this term divine. We've seen it out on the internet, but love to use that because it just really speaks to the heart of like making sure that all comes together and this doesn't feel separate at any point in the process. So this in the middle is kind of our Think Standard library, one that we've created on our own, but that could also be Bootstrap, Material UI, any of those that are used commonly. And that will both power design and development, but also we're informing that at the same time as a design system. And then for content and planning, getting those research insights, we're putting that all into Airtable from the beginning. So that's going to also power Figma. There's plugins out there that will actually extract the content into your designs. And then the same thing, we're connecting the API to the code that's going to power the site all the way down until it's live. So that's the thing that we'll be demoing a little bit later. But yeah, I just wanted to share that to show you kind of the inner workings of the process there. If you kind of set that up in the beginning and everyone knows that the inner workings are there, as opposed to on the way and kind of, as you're going, I think it makes it all very clear for everyone from the start there. And then that's where OOUX comes in. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
Just one of the things that I wanted to point out here real quick is that we see Airtable as kind of like the core of this diagram. It lets it be our single source of truth for content, whether we're on the design side, the development side, even the production side, like that's still the core source of truth for all of our content. And like having that one single spot that we can see all this that's accessible to everyone is just like a really great part of this whole setup.
Cool. And then I think the way that we even, connected with you, Sophia, as a Think Company collective, there was an article written from John Young about, what the heck is a front end developer anyway? And so that one had a very nice pancake illustration to go with it. So we like to, think about that when we're thinking about the stacks, everything kind of laddering up together, just making it all, nice for you in the end there. All right. And so everyone here is most likely familiar with OOUX, and Sophia, obviously you can chime in here, but this is basically what we have been taking, whether it's kind of more, I would say, intentional with the clients, or unless it's more just in our minds, it has become kind of this natural thing of, of course, we're using Airtable. And I think the structure that Airtable allows you to do, because it kind of starts at the very high level with the tables being pretty much similar to your core objects. And then everything within that table, the columns going down kind of represent the core data and the metadata associated with that. And so you can kind of see how that's mapping out here. I'm doing a lot of fast forwarding because we don't have much time, but I think you all are understanding, how the process kind of flows from once you're picking out your core objects there. Then once you're in Airtable or whatever your CMS that you would be choosing, kind of making that the top level there, and then diving deep once you go in. And so right here, we're kind of seeing if we had a conference site, that's what we're going to be demoing. What makes up a conference? There's events, there's speakers, there's sponsors and stages. And so from there, we kind of already know, okay, that's making up the conference, but then there's also all the attributes that go within there. So, titles of the events, names of the speakers, for example, and even the stages that they're on, and then how those all nest together, the fun stuff that Sophia has in all her courses and education around OOUX. But yeah, I'll stop there for any questions. I think, Sophia, you wanted to chime in here.
No, this is looking good. I love the color coding. Nice color coding there.
Yeah.
And I'll be monitoring the chat. I'm in the chat, so y'all don't even need to worry about it. So if any questions do come up, I'll either, I'll take them down or wait for a natural break to bubble up any questions to you. So far, no questions, but everybody else, make sure if you do have questions, put them in the chat, and I will be the question wrangler and deliverer as they come up. But so far, yeah, this is tracking.
Awesome. Great. Cool. So yeah, we will hop out of this presentation very shortly just to get into the good stuff where you're seeing the connection. Okay, yeah, now you've done your noun foraging, you've kind of identified everything that makes up the experience that you're going to be creating. Okay, now we're planning that out, we're putting it in a place where it's going to be managed. And then we get to the magic stuff where, okay, you've done that and now it's showing up live for everyone to see on a front end, on a website there. And so, yeah, Anthony, take it away from you. You might be on mute. We can't hear you, Anthony.
I did the muted thing. This is the first time I've ever done that.
There we go.
Rookie move. I did that about 6 times today. It's all good.
We're doing great. We're doing great. Yeah, so in a second, I'm going to spin up a screen share and we'll step through kind of this application and a bit of the Airtable setup. Real quick, I just want to shout out Think Company's former tech lead, Ian McPhail, had spun this up as a workshop that he had done, and it's informed a lot of what we're going to be going over here. So just wanted to give him a quick shout out for the amazing work that he did on this. Yeah, let me see if it'll let me take over. Yes, cool. All right, where is? Hang on. Let's get a whole thing.
Window wrangling, playing the window wrangling game in Zoom.
Always. Okay, I may have done this right or I may have done it wrong.
I see an app screen.
We see code. I see
code.
code.
And a little background of code. Perfect. All right, so let me move this over here real quick. Cool. So this is kind of our demo site. It's the app conference where we're going to talk about an app. A bunch of the content here is powered by an Airtable that we've created, and that Airtable that we actually just saw a screenshot of. So this is our Airtable. It's broken down into, we've got, event speakers, sponsor stages, and those different things will power different parts of the application. Real quick before we dive into it, I just wanted to point out for any of the developers here, Airtable's API documentation and just the ability to work with it inside of like JavaScript applications is amazing and super straightforward. If you go to, so I'm currently logged into Airtable. If I go to airtable.com/API, it pulls up a list of all of the Airtable bases that I'm a part of. And I can just click that link and it brings up an API documentation specifically tailored to that base. There's not a lot of developers here. I don't know if everyone realizes how crazy this is, but this is incredible.
No, that's incredible. I'm not a developer and I understand that that's incredible because it's like, yeah, wow. So yeah, I guess you were logged in. Of course you were logged in and it shows you. So it's a junction object between the documentation and your specific base. And now it's
yeah. And you can see here, it breaks it down for all your different tables. Like it's got all the information in here. It's amazing. Wow. This is the first time I came across this, it blew my mind. And then they also, on top of that, like there's that, and then there's more documentation just around like the ability to actually go and like how you would work with it in your scripting. And then there's also a fancy little package that lets you very easily authenticate to Airtable and interact with the base object, which I'll point out in a minute. So everyone with me so far? It's a little, we're getting a little in the weeds, but that's okay.
That's all good. Actually, Rahel has a question. Is the highlighted conference name Cinco de Mayo a variable?
Where are we?
You might need to clarify your question, Rahel.
Yeah, So
when you're showing the kind of the live site, and then Cinco de Mayo was in green, highlighted in green. So it seems to me that like if you change Cinco de Mayo to some other name, then it would replace all of the Cinco de Mayo references. So that in my world, we call that a variable.
I think Cinco de Mayo was the base, right?
yeah, so in this case, so Cinco de Mayo was actually the name. Cinco de Mayo conference is the name of the base, but you are onto something. We have, so this is broken down into a couple of different things. Specifically, the conference name is stored in this UI data field, where we're kind of using this UI data to anything that's not like a strict, like, table of objects. We're just kind of, we need to throw some content in the site. We're kind of putting that all together under UI data. They're generally like key value pairs instead of like a full table. So in this case, we have title and app conference, right? And we have so site section is hero, and we can actually break this down a couple different ways. But right now, our site's title is app conference. So if we want to go in here, and we're going to call this the Cinco de Mayo conference. I think I spelled that all right.
Yep.
And now if we go.
The other amazing thing about Airtable are the views. So even though I'm putting, things in a record list one down, I'm able to group those specifically we've tagged them with the site section here. And so you can see that view of, okay, now I'm looking at every global element. I want to change that, or I'm looking at everything part of the hero and kind of grouping them in that way, which is really awesome when you're working on lots of content and lots of sections of the site.
Yeah, and so that was actually, I couldn't remember where it was under the views. So if we go back here and we just refresh this is now our Cinco de Mayo conference. And this will work for all of the things that we've connected. If we want to get a little more complex, do something a little crazier. Let's see, we've got our events here. And so our events are broken down into views. We've got a day 1 schedule and a day 2 schedule. These are auto-populated based on the start date of that event. We can click into them here, and we can add an event here. So I don't know, Keith, give me a name for an event.
About solar systems and design.
There we go. Actually, before I get too far along in that, I'm going to scroll down to our events panel. And so as we can see, like they're related. We have a one-to-one relationship with, we've got our day 1 events in here, and we've got our day 2 events in here. That's automatically picked up because, and I'll show this in a second, we can actually get the data based on the view and then just display that data. So we can actually break down the data any which way we want inside of Airtable. And Airtable's API makes it really easy for us to get that data broken down the way content wants to, and then display it that way. So we don't have to do a lot of wrangling on the front end to figure out where this data needs to go. It's already all sorted out by Airtable. So let's see, this is Esther Howard's going to be giving this speech, and it's going to be, is this going to populate? There we go. This one's going to be on, I passed the date. June, it's going to be on Sunday. It starts at 6:31. Space. And there we go. And if I refresh this again, this now appears in day 2 automatically because it's already broken down by view. Yeah, it's so, really easy. Go ahead.
So amazing.
I have a question about the, I don't know what it's called in Airtable, I guess like the lookup fields. So I saw that you added, so you have basically a nested object, you have a speaker. So an event has one-to-many speakers, I guess. You can have many speakers, yes. It looks like. And then you grab that speaker name. So that's a lookup field, right? So
yeah, so actually, so Keith, do you want to actually, because I don't know how to unhide fields in here.
Yeah. we have the speaker table as well. So it might be pulling from that because it's pulling the base string or kind of the source string from the speakers table. And then we're referencing it more so for like our mental model once we're in Airtable. But as far as I
Oh.
think the API is probably calling it from that second table there in speaker.
So yeah,
So
what's happening is
because you want the speaker name to show on the event, you have to like not just pull it as the reference field, you actually have to pull the speaker name as well. So like if you wanted to show speaker name, and if you have another piece of metadata like speaker title or something like that, and you wanted that to also show on the event card, you would need to pull that as well.
yeah, you would have it as these hidden, we use them as these hidden fields. Well, because what happens is this is like a little in the weeds of the API. If I query against this and I grab that speaker for this event object, I'm going to get a hash that references like a reference ID for that speaker, which is not useful if we're trying to tell people.
Right,
so what we do is we use these hidden fields to store the data from that other table inside of this table. And then that automatically gets updated. We hide it so no one messes with it. And so when I reference it, instead I grab the speaker's name item, and it gives me the like pretty name instead of a reference ID.
That makes sense. Lydia has a question that I think you might need to elaborate. Lydia's asking about, is this like a taxonomy term? Can you elaborate on that, Lydia?
Yeah, I think that's just how my agency does it is we build content models off of Drupal and WordPress. And so in my mind, speaker would be like a taxonomy term. I guess it could also be a content type that you then reference. Is this would just be like a reference to another object and not like a taxonomy?
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. So you're saying taxonomy term, that makes me think that we're thinking in a WordPress mental model right now. And so, yeah, this would be more like my WordPress is rusty.
We mostly use Drupal. I'm not very good at WordPress, okay. But don't try to impress me.
Essentially, yeah, this would be a reference to another content type.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I guess you'll probably get into later what I would consider a quote unquote taxonomy. But all right, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. So moving forward. So let me see if I can. I had a couple bookmarks of things I wanted to show for the developers in the room because it made me very happy. So before I was saying it's very easy to authenticate against Airtable and start working with it. This is it. This block of code right here, we give it a name of a table, we instantiate the Airtable object, we give it our API key. Literally the only things we need from outside are our personal API key, which tells Airtable who we are as a user. And then we need the ID of the base, which in this case is the Cinco de Mayo base. We pass those to Airtable, and then it gives us back a table. In this case, we're passing along this, the table name here that we're passing along gives us one of these so that we can use this throughout the code base. But this is all it takes, and I can get anything I need from this Airtable base. This is the easiest connection I've ever set up for managing data from a site. And it's cool because it works both ways as well. So there's another neat little feature that I wanted to kind of walk through here. Now, if we go down to we've got a newsletter. We need to, we want to be able to get people's email addresses so that we can add them to a mailing list. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to put my email in here. Let's add, and we're going to hit submit. Thanks for signing up. And we're going to go to subscribers. And I'm in here twice because I did this before and didn't delete the record, so it's way less impressive. But we can add, we can post information to the Airtable base as well as retrieving information from it. So this lets us still have Airtable be that single source of truth from for both sides, whether we're displaying content on the site or getting content from people submitting form data. Yeah, yes, we're not writing SQL queries anymore against our databases. It's wonderful.
I'm in awe. Every time Anthony shows me this connection, I'm in awe because as a designer, I've always been focused on the Airtable experience. So what are we setting up in there and making sure that's right? But then there's this whole other side that, it's actually being presented and, data is going in and out from the Airtable. So that every time I'm just fascinated by it.
And so I take here with the form, it doesn't need to just be a one field form. This could be a suggest or apply to speak at this conference. So you could have speaker applications and it could bring all of that data in.
Yeah, there's another example. We have a whole contact form, and you can submit all of this data. And so I could go through Anthony, and we're going to use my type. We'll use my personal email. We'll say, let's say, and then and we'll submit that. And as we can see,
wow, it's so fast.
That's now an Airtable. That's instantaneous. And the code is running on my computer, but this Airtable is like a real Airtable. This isn't only happening on my computer. It's going right out to the internet, and it's immediate. Yeah, it's really cool.
So we had some issues with this integrating Airtable and Webflow, actually, where we were just using an Airtable form and then pulling it into Webflow. But with the Airtable form, there was a lot of, it was difficult to validate fields. So I'm guessing you're right. Are you writing custom code to validate that the email address is correct, or say like the message can only have 500 characters or something like that? Because it seems like Airtable doesn't do validation very well just with their out of the box forms.
Yeah. So all we're doing here, and I think I have, where is it? It would be, well, let's look at the newsletter one. So this newsletter form, this is a fully custom code that we've written. It's not imported from anywhere. It's just a regular old HTML form. It's inside of React, but it's using native web form elements. We can write any which thing we want, and then all we're doing is posting that to Airtable. So we don't have to rely on any sort of form plugins, anything like that. We have full control over the entire UI experience. There's no situation where we're forced to leverage someone else's like plugin code.
Ah, got it. Okay, so you're validating it on your side, not Airtable. Beautiful.
Yeah. And then, so one of the other things that I wanted to sort of talk about, it's not a functioning part of this site, but it was something I was tooling around with, which is the idea of, how do we deal with the fact that Airtable isn't going to let us host assets there? We need to still manage assets. It's still part of content. So how will we do this? And so one of the solutions I came up with is that we add an assets table. Now there's an attachment here. That attachment is just for a reference for the content manager. We would then also give that an ID. And what we would do is, in a situation where we needed to assign that to something, so say in UI data, we're making that the background for the hero. We then add this asset, and then that ID would get passed to the application, and we can then use that ID to grab that asset from the CDN locally, whatever. It allows us to, still manage everything that we need to through Airtable, but we can do it in a way that, works with how Airtable wants to work, where they're not forced to, host all of our image assets. We can do that ourselves, and we can just kind of look them up by this ID. And that's like a really not too complex workaround for dealing with that issue. And yeah, that's go ahead.
Anthony, yeah, while you were in the Airtable, one thing about the tables and you can kind of see that some things are not like the others. So we mentioned like, okay, you got your core objects across the table, and then you get to UI data, and assets. There's no idea of like sections in there, but there's different ways you can kind of differentiate and say, this is information that is, going to be pulled in for the UI, but then separate from the actual, raw content areas, which we're going to see in the other tables there. So that's just, how we've done it, but would be curious to see how other people have kind of experimented with, both connecting UI copy versus content and raw data there.
Yeah, and Yeah, this is our, so yeah. And then just to kind of poke around some of the other parts, like this is our speakers table. So, it's pretty straightforward. We've got our speakers' names, and this information, again, we're pulling in other situations to kind of leverage that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, as far as the demo goes, that's about everything that I've got, unless anyone has any questions or things they'd like to see.
There's a great question in the chat, Francis, about putting emojis in there, or a suggestion.
Oh,
I wonder, how that plays with the code. Yeah, like, will that, how does
it means that you have to put the emoji in the code as well.
There we go.
That was actually in Airtable's kind of example. If you spin up, like, I think their event base uses emojis in the table names, and yeah, it just means we have to copy the emoji and put it into the code. I personally prefer just removing them because it makes my life easier as an engineer, but it's not impossible. We can put the emojis into the code base. It works perfectly fine.
Yeah, there's another question.
Do you want to talk to that, Keith?
Yeah. That's a multi-select field type there. So if you, Anthony, click on the caret next to discipline there. Yeah, above there. Yeah, this field type here, you can basically custom write your options here. So yeah, once you customize them, depending on the plan that you have, there's different options around colors and tagging things. But yeah, you can add as many options as far as I know in here to add more disciplines. So yeah, you can kind of see the.
And how well do changes propagate? So if you have 16 speakers and they all are design, and I go in there and I change design to UX, does all those changes propagate? So wherever I need to show that on the speaker detail page, design gets changed to UX.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we went into here and customize that.
Yeah, and all the same kind of shortcuts and commands that you would get from Excel or Google Sheets, as far as kind of copying to different roles, you can do that same thing here, just with the bottom right corner. You can kind of, if you wanted everyone to be UX discipline, you can just do that from, dragging across the different columns there.
And that doesn't break anything on the front end of the website, right? If I go and I change those design to UX or.
That's actually a good point. In this application, we're not doing any sort of querying based on multi-select fields, I don't believe. I'm not sure if it would use, it might break if we were requesting all of the designers and then we change that to UX. It might break it. I'm not sure if it uses an ID or the term itself.
Okay. And I'm also curious, so within Airtable, you would use those multi-selects to do some sort of filtering or sorting, right? So I could go in there and I could filter by UX. Like, what if you wanted to do that on the front end?
So what we do, I believe I have an example of this in the application somewhere. Where do you live? Okay, here. Yeah. So in this little code sample here, this is what we're using to get all of the speakers. Right. So from here, we've got our get base method, we're passing speakers. And so there's this select, and this select method lets us tell Airtable what fields do we want. And so in this case, we're doing it by view, which the view is all speakers, which you can see correlates to this view here. And then we're telling it which fields we want to get. And so that's how we're grabbing those fields there. And that's how, and then there's a couple little other things in here to make it work with our application, but that's how we can kind of pick and choose what we want and filter. So if we look at I don't know where, okay, I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but when we're doing the events section, we're actually querying that by view. And for the first event section, we're doing that by view of day 1 schedule. And then for the second section by day 2 schedule, which are sorted, but which are then automatically broken down by the date. So it's all kind of automatically funneling into these different views. And then we can just grab that and display it in the UI.
That makes so much sense. So you're doing that filtering or sorting on the view side, and then you pull the view. Okay, got it.
And that
very cool.
Yeah, it lets us manage all of that stuff on the content side. None of it falls onto the front end, which makes it way easier to just know what we're going to get. there's the UI isn't manipulating and changing everything, and then we put in something and something completely different comes out. We're putting in our data is one structure, and then that's what shows up in the UI.
So Richard has a good question here that got +1. How do you show relationships between the tables?
Keith, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So if you were to create a new field, you're on events now. So let's just delete stage name, I would say. Well, actually, you might break the website if we do that one. But, the idea, if you hit plus on a new column there. So basically, link to another record. And that's a record in any other table that you're going to see, and it'll give you the options there. So I'm in events now, and let's say a nested object is there's a sponsor logo on each stage, for example. So if you hit that, you can allow the linking of multiple records from that table that we're pulling from. And so if we create that field, you'll see that we have options now for, or at least we have to pick the name. So there's many attributes within that table, but we can just select which one we want from that, probably just the name for this matter. Or for this example. And so right there, you're able to select from any sponsors that you've put in that sponsors table, and they're going to populate there. They're going to populate both that multi-select, but also it's going to populate the text read-only field as well, that you'll see where it's actually grabbing the content from for the code there. So now we've got sponsors, all right on the front of our stage there. We've linked those together.
And again, like this read-only field is the one that we would use in the user interface to grab that data, because again, that's going to be the pretty name and not the reference ID.
Definitely sponsoring the Cinco de Mayo Airtable conference.
Awesome.
Happening right now. It's so meta. Love it.
Yeah. There's one thing too, on the day one schedule, we were talking about sorting before. Anthony, I think if you were to switch the sorting on that, should that populate within the website as well? So on if you go to the view for day one schedule.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if I went
right here, now it's sorted by the start time, date and time field, but we can switch that from ascending or descending. We were wondering, like, does that also affect the front end there?
One thing, we're not seeing the sponsors in there.
That's per view. Yeah. So that linking only happens per view. So we've done it in the grid view, but it doesn't carry over to any of the other views. Although it's there, it's hidden. It's hidden until you reveal it. So I'm sorry. We were talking about the sorting per view. Oh yeah. By start date. So right now we've got it.
Yeah. So we could actually right now, let's go back up here and let's look at our day one schedule. So it's sorted by, the first one is going to be this 4 p.m. one, the second one's going to be the 6 p.m. one. And if we decided to invert that, yes. What should happen, what I think will happen, is these will get reversed.
Fingers crossed here.
There we go.
Look at that.
So yeah, it
shouldn't be this easy, but it's
it's cheating. You're cheating.
And it gives you this control of, like, you can just, like, if you want to manually order them and drag and drop them, like, it'll respect that as well. It gives us the data in the order that it is sorted by in the user interface, so we don't have to do any kind of messing with that. It's great.
So you've given us an inch and now we want a mile. So Joey's asking, does Airtable integrate with design in Figma? And so how does Figma, so we saw that in your Divine stack. How does Figma roll into all this?
Yeah, and Christine, spot on. There's a plugin, a few plugins actually. One was named Airtable to Figma, and it basically does exactly what we're saying. We've just demoed that from Airtable to code in the front end, but there's one that goes from Airtable to your Figma designs, pulling that content in the same way by mapping the different fields and saying, okay, I have a layer in my Figma file called events. It's going to slot that content right in there, the variable that you've picked out. There's also Jordan Singer, who does a lot of great work in applications. His plugin or platform called Automator, you can do custom scripting. So you have access to the Figma API, and you can basically do any kind of app that you would want to create using API from Figma and connecting that with the API for Airtable. So there's definitely lots of exploration and fun stuff there as well.
And how does that fit into your process, Keith? I mean, with this, did you design this in Figma first before it got into code? Or did you use a design system and just go straight into code?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like with the clients, they'll give us a lot of content and data that they have. So imagine a CSV coming in with all this information. First of all, we could bring that in Airtable easily by just importing that and having everything live the way it is. So now we've got our content there. And then I'm saying I'm designing and I'm referencing things that are in Airtable at that point. I'm not designing just based on, lorem ipsum. I'm saying my layer is going to be called event because I need to know to call the event name from the Airtable data that we have. So, although the design is happening, like the visual is kind of happening on the fly, it's still structured and informed by the content that we've set up in the beginning there.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. Getting a CSV of data from your client. Does that always happen? Is that something that you require at Think Company? Like give us the content before, or how do you, I guess in our last few minutes here, if you could talk a little bit about how the client comes into this and how you decide how to set up your tables and what your objects are, basically everything that happens before this.
That's a great question. I should have started with that, more context there. But yeah,
it's all good.
Every client's different. Yeah, every client's different there. And in that case, there was, a lot of data already up front, but most of the times it is a research effort. We're starting to build that data up over time by, interviewing and kind of talking to the people who are using that. So in a less data heavy experience, you don't have as much to leverage. You are making that part up as you go. But yeah, we were lucky on that one partnership with the client where they already gave us a lot of the structure and data. And to that point, it's like we didn't have to do as much upfront work there. We kind of, fell into that with the data that was available.
Very cool. Richard, did you have a question? I don't want to try to repeat it. It sounds, so the APIs read and views. What do you want to just speak up what your question is?
It seems that from the code we're calling or reading views. Can you read the base table, or so you don't have to build a view with all the fields?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, if you look at the one where we're grabbing the conference information, we're just grabbing what we were using the views for was to select, to get a certain set of data. We can read directly from the table. I can pull everything I want, but in this case, we're doing select fields. We're getting name and text because those are the fields that we need from this table. But yeah, we can get everything directly from the table. I think we can even reference the entire base without breaking it down by table.
Yeah, but the view's got the advantage that it can connect different tables together for you and stuff. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, the views are where we have a lot of control over what we're trying to display. So the views are really cool for this view is going to be a view in the user interface.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Rahel is asking, have you done anything with chatbot content, or is that a whole other topic? I have that question too.
Yeah, we're on so many different projects. I personally haven't, but yeah, I wonder, Anthony, if you've been on that.
I have not. Not really chatbots. I've done some Slackbot stuff, but that's not quite this. I'm sorry, I can't really speak to that sort of thing.
So I do know that there are a couple OOUXers out there that are using OOUX for voice UI design. So if you think about getting an object map together, that information does not necessarily have to go onto a screen. There's also folks that are using object mapping for VR experiences and XR experiences. So really you're figuring out what is the stuff of this environment and whether it ends up on a screen or it ends up through voice or, really, if you think about that object map, you can start analyzing what are the things made of, how do they relate to each other? And you can start really thinking about what questions people are going to be asking a chatbot or a voice UI. So definitely OOUX can help with that. And getting it into Airtable and going into a chatbot, I don't know about that.
So I think about it. I can see it working. there is the JavaScript API. There's other there's API packages for other programming languages. So I believe there's one for Python, Ruby. I had some notes about this actually. Ruby, Microsoft's .NET, and Python. There's community maintained connectors. So if you were writing a voice UI in any of those, you could leverage Airtable for that too. And yeah.
Let us know how it goes, Rahel. Stay in touch about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there's any other questions, please put them in the chat. We've just got a few minutes. Otherwise, we will go ahead and wrap up. Any other questions, y'all? This is so awesome. I mean, it seems like magic, but I mean, this is it also seems like the inevitable development of how the inevitable future of how design and development continues to merge and work better together. So it's just really cool to see y'all living the dream there, working hand in hand.
Yeah, excited to share it. Thanks for everybody for coming in, Sophia, for hosting us.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks so much, and y'all have a happy Cinco de Mayo. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Bye.